Well, hello, and welcome to Stop Let's Team Up, episode 100.2, the second half of my, Jim, and Kirby's talk about the different Legion eras. We're going to pick up with Levitz Giffen, which is a big one, and then we're going to keep going. We're going to go all the way to the end to the Benids era. So, folks, sit back and enjoy the rest of our conversation. But, yeah. No, well, then we get to Levitz. We're calling it Levitz Giffen, but it starts with Levitz, Broderick, and then Broderick and Giffen kind of flop because Giffen was doing the backup.
Right.
And what I liked was Levitz comes in running that, okay, these stories are going to be 2 or 3 issues. I'm going to have 2 stories going on at the same time with 2 different groups, a beginning and a main story and a backup. And it all... You don't even know it's happening. I remember this because I'm going to tell you, I'm going to hog the just beginning of this, and then I'm going to let you guys talk about this because I'll just gush. But I read this unfold. I was reading this like working in a comic shop, and then Annual 1 came out. You know, you had the backup where they get marooned. This weird thing's going on with Mon-El and Shadowlasser on a mission. And you're going, oh, something's building up. Okay, maybe a throwaway. You don't know what's going on. You get Annual 1. I own a copy of Annual 1 because it's that important of a comic to me. Because, 1, it introduces Jacques. And I love Jacques. I don't have a problem with Jacques. Jacques is one of my favorite Legionnaires. And it's because of that. And that computer story's great. That's where it flips the switch. And then... the next issue is the first chapter of the Great Darkness Saga, which is probably the most famous Legion story and the most well-read one of all time. Right. And I cannot describe to you, because no internet, very little comic press, and if you were getting any, it was after the fact. It was a comics journal. It was talking about the art of comic books, and then... we had Comic Reader was out, which would talk about superhero stuff. Mm-hmm. And it was based on just a jumped up fanzine. We had no idea what was going on. There was no spoilers. You get to the panel in chapter 4, the silhouette of the head, the planet changing shape.
Yeah.
Spoilers, people. If you're listening to this, you've got to have read
Absolutely.
it. Boom. And then you go, oh, shit. Did he just bring Kirby crap into Legion? And of course Darkseid would still be around. Why has no one done this? And I think it is probably... How long are they to get? 5 years on it? 6 years? Almost 7?
I think...
So, well, 84 begins the
Baxter series?
The V3, the version 3...
So it's like, so 81 or 82.
Yeah, so it's not
at least 2 years.
Yeah.
80, yeah. And the Magic War is in what?
89.
80...
Yeah, because for V3, Giffen starts that run, but then Steve Lytle takes over.
And then Greg LaRock after that.
Right,
and then
exactly.
Giffen comes back.
And then Giffen comes back, right, so towards the end of it. But I mean... I agree with what you're saying, Ross. I mean, so not to spend too much time on it from my perspective, because I pretty much agree with everything you also said. When I did my full reread, or as full as I could make it, a couple of years ago, when you get to that Annual 1, there's a sea change that happens, and you can definitely tell there's a shift of tone, of art, of just things happening, kind of a new formula that's happening. You mentioned the B story, right? This is, he's taking these television concepts, right, from episodic television to have the primary story, but then you have this other backup thing happening here, and then things
which will eventually become the primary story 4 issues down.
Exactly. I mean, it's just masterclass storytelling, honestly, over time, right?
Yeah.
So that's all I have really to say, because it's just such a good stretch of time.
Okay, so this is so again. I was born in 90. This is where I came in, and I didn't even come in until college when my friend JR, who I think I've referenced in the past, he gave me a trade of the Great Darkness Saga, which of course has Darkseid on the cover.
Good friend.
So I was basically thrown into the deep end and told to figure it out, which I did, and it is why I'm still nice.
Yeah. I have the deluxe. I bought a broken one that doesn't have the dust jacket.
Actually, I have like two other
they
copies
reprint
of it back here. Hang on.
Yep. So for me, yeah. So cosign on that's the version I have, or
Yeah.
I was given. I found a copy of my own. So
I also have it in the New Gods omnibus too.
So yeah, no, like.
Sorry.
Oh,
yeah, it has a nice fold out illustration.
Oh, is that the poster?
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, I think again, like, if you're gonna be thrown into the deep end of the Legion, this is honestly probably one of the best places to start, because it becomes like, you don't need everything from the past issues, but Levitz is able to get his run started, and
yeah, it's a good jump on point. People do.
Yeah, again, I'm proof in the pudding here, so.
I was working at comic book shops on and off, or going and having my local, and I have to say, this is an era where Legion sold almost as well as X-Men or Teen Titans.
Yep.
They were the three big team books. FF would jump in and out, others would jump in and out. I guess this is when Stern was doing Avengers, which is another master's class in a different type of story, in Avengers storytelling. But how he weaved the elections in.
Mm-hmm.
And like the Dream Girl, she gets elected, and then Element Lad, it all becomes very important. And as fans, and I think they listen to fans, Element Lad becomes a huge driving force of Legion for a big chunk of this, because they're going, the fans love him, and he's come runner up in the Legion leader one. He's in the top 2 in Legion leader polls for like a decade. So they go, let's show you why he's this Captain America, Scott Summers, natural leader.
Right.
You know what I mean? He's the closest they have to that. If you're going to go default, who's the best strategic leader on the field? It's that, or Cosmic Boy, or Saturn Girl.
Yep.
Like, she comes back, and then I just think it just grooves. And then there's also what Giffen, let's touch on Giffen, because I'm like focusing on plot. The visual style, Giffen starts with normal Giffen Kirby-esque kind of art. And it changes, but he does a whole new costume revamp. And I think for the most part, at the beginning, he does very well. I don't mind some of the later ones, but some of the other later ones, I understand why the pockets.
Yeah, we'll get to that era later.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah. But that's a whole different monster. But he does some nice redesigns. I like his block, and all these other characters get poured into the block becomes important. He's just someone who was a bad guy, and Conway added him.
Like they made
White Witch.
Yep.
I love that little Timber. I actually love Timberwolf in this leader. I never really cared.
No, Timberwolf is not
But
good
him
until
and
they give
Block-
him in Block that weird friendship where why do these guys work? But they do.
It's why do Blue and Gold work? Why did the Beast and Wonder Man work? Why do it's accident. It is an absolute accident.
But
you put them in a scene together, and the people talk about it.
But that's the thing. So that's one of the driving things about this whole thing. Great Darkness on through the end of V3 really is these character clicks and relationships that really start to develop. So you have things like the Tasmia and Mon-El are like best friends with Joe and Tinya, right? Because they're these power couples. Then you have Shrinking Violet's journey, and then eventually the budding relationship that she has with Lightlass, which are again these are the definitive things that really echo through.
No one in editorial's paying a damn confession, and you made them lovers.
Here's the thing. So here's the thing about that is that so at this point in time, Jeanette Kahn is the editor, right? She's the editor in chief, and so
she's publisher.
The publisher, right? And so she's tight with Paul, right? So she's like, okay, Paul,
I
trust you to do what you want to do, right?
I don't do. He's the editor in chief at that point, and the publisher. She's brought in. She ran. She knew how She knew to leave artists alone. I'm not going to control you.
Right.
That was her thing. She knew how to get the product into the right hands. You know what I mean, and to get it into more hands. And she is for Legion be good was she left her number one guy in charge of it.
Oh,
and
I made a mistake. It's Karen Berger who was the editor at the time, not Jeanette Kahn.
Right.
Oh my God!
Yeah, he was one of the best DC ever.
Oh my God! It's one of the best editors in the history of comics. Straight up. Isn't she Vertigo too?
She's the driving force behind Vertigo.
Force of Vertigo.
Yep. Yeah, and this is around the time when she was starting to kind of move on to the Vertigo line. So
she's getting a promotion.
Right.
You're doing a great job. Why don't you run a line?
Yep.
And she does a great job, I think. And it's just it really rocks and rolls. It has its up and downs. You lose Keith Giffen, you get Steve Lyman.
Yeah.
Which oh my God, like that first 5-issue arc, like.
LSV, yeah.
My butt was in my seat until I finished that arc, because that was some of the best moments in all of Legion. There, the death of Karate Kid, which is so heartbreaking, where you just see him like beaten to death, and he flies to save his wife's people, and then Projectra in the next issue killing Nemesis Kid, just snapping his neck,
just going,
and she's like. Yeah. Element Lad and the rest coming is like, you killed him. I executed a condemned man as by my royal decree. Do you disagree with me? And it's like, when she comes back, they're like, we call that self-defense. We're putting down quotes and letting you back in.
I remember when she comes back, it's like, no, you should just go, it's not the same. I was a queen. He was convicted. And I did it myself.
Yep.
Whatever. It's a great one. And Projectra, when she comes back,
right?
She's different, but she's the same. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Everything is earned. They don't do anything stupid to a character, and they don't do anything and then forget about the next issue, which drives me crazy. It's why when I watch old episodic TV, it's like, what? Do you not have trauma from all the crap that's happened?
Exactly.
Oh, no, because
that's the interesting thing about this era as well, right? So the V3 Baxter run is when that's when the crisis, the original crisis happens, right? Where Supergirl dies, and we see the reaction to the Legion.
I love how
Brainiac,
I think Paul does the best with it, because Brainiac loses his shit.
Yeah, like he's clearly going to depression. His hair grows out because he's not taking care of himself.
Yeah, and then of course that gives us the Censor Girl arc, right?
Yep.
Who she is, and the big speculation. Okay, who is she? Is she a Projector? Is she Supergirl? Who knows, right? And and then we find out.
Yeah, and you can't tell that clearly. Editorial said no on that one. Like it works well enough, not as well as a later pivot that we'll get to a couple eras from now, but it's a good one. But unfortunate. Should we pull the Band-Aid off on the thing that might have killed the Legion?
What's that?
John Byrne?
The John Byrne.
No, I'm gonna play devil's advocate. As I was. You guys came to that after the fact in some ways, but here's the deal. Most of the mistakes that they made editorial are not Byrne taking Superboy out. Because they did it with Hawkman, they did it with other characters, they just kept making the wrong decisions. The people that were in charge of the books didn't think. That's on Levitz. He could have just ignored it. They remember him.
That's the thing, right? And I think we're gonna.
It's on Levitz. It's not on Byrne. It's on Levitz. He had to have a fix. He didn't pick the right fix.
Well, we're gonna get there. I think in the next jump too. But Mike Harlan. When you talk to some of the folks who were actually at DC at the time, they were very much of the mindset of Byrne and Carlin's edicts that these books had to do these things, screwed things up. I kind of agree with you what you just said, Ross, where they could have just kind of given them the finger and just kept doing what they were doing, right? But who knows how
it's in Crisis that everybody who was at the end of time remembers before.
Right.
They gave them a frickin' out.
Yeah.
And I just think they kept chiggering it, man. Once they made the bad decision, they should have just stayed into it. And some of the fixes or the attempted fixes later, like make it Mon-El. Oh, all right,
Valor, yeah.
Yeah, it's not terrible. It's the same thing. And he's a good character. It doesn't really matter. But I'm a big Roy Thomas fan. I think he just has a temper tantrum at the end of All-Star Squadron. It's just it's just a temper tantrum. I'm not going to even care. Well, at least tell a story that someone else wrote. Don't just start retell other people's stories for 20 issues.
Yeah. I do see that point. Like, they easily could have said both are true, and then leave it to someone else to figure out. Just, you know what? It's the Time Trapper just playing with everyone's minds, and you don't have to worry about the pocket universe, which creates problems and solves problems. And
but that's the thing. It's a comic book, so you can be kind of blasé about how you end up fixing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just, I thought the pocket wasn't a bad idea. I just don't think it sticks the landings, and I think other people just. I have a problem with one, and Byrne. I love Byrne and hate Byrne, because Byrne will come in and go, well, I don't like what they wrote 10 years ago, so I'm going to undo it. It's like, no.
Yeah. Well, I have another kind of talking point that we'll save for when we get to the next era about that.
Yeah. Let's move. This ran for a long time. It was a hot.
But I think what we should do before we actually close the door on the Baxter stuff is really talk about what we said before, right? Where we had Giffen coming back in as the main artist, and when he came back in, right, he had that new Jose Munoz inspired art style, which made things much more blocky. He had the different costumes. I didn't mind the costumes either so much, but it was more the
when he nailed it, he nailed it. When he did,
it was more the square heads that I think that I had kind of the more challenging problem with. But that's just me.
This art style works for
I'm one of those people that likes that era because I like to see an artist do different styles. He leaned into it too much later, but sometimes it works for him. Omac, it works for him.
Yes. When he's doing more of a Kirby, it works.
But him coming back, he's coming back because he's taken over. Isn't that what was going on?
Yeah.
He's not back with Levitz for what? Just the one.
It's like a year.
Is it just the one arc?
Yeah, Magic Wars.
Did he
Magic
hold
Wars, basically.
Yeah. And the
sets it up, does it? Yeah. And then we get, what year did 5 years later?
1989. And let me get started here.
All right.
Nice.
Okay, because I know it is an era of let's make it dark and gritty, and I love that. As much as I take the piss out of Alan Moore being a cranky, just complainer. And he said it is, they all did it because they saw that dark and gritty sold. But they weren't. Moore and Miller's big thing was not. It was just like, no, those stories were dark and gritty. And Alan Moore was interviewed and goes, why did you guys? I was at Fasher's England. I was in a shitty mood.
Yeah.
So and if you watched movies at the time, it's we're gonna turn into 10 years down the road, we're going to be in a fascist society and it's all going to hell. They were just off by a couple of decades. But it does take that turn. It gets they push it toward that. And so 5 years later has come. I'm going to let you guys talk first about it. Because you guys have very strong opinions.
Do you want to go first, Jim, or me?
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I mean, because I came at it in a slightly different way because as we'll get to, the reboot was my first Legion, and then when I started collecting the most recent things that I could get, and most of those were the Baxters and the 5 years laters, and at the time I had no idea. I couldn't make heads or tails of anything, right? So then jump.
Yeah, it's not new reader friendly.
No. And so when I jumped to actually doing the full reread, I get to this era, and I'm like, okay, I kind of took it for what it was, and that the first year's arc is actually very, very good. But then as it keeps kind of going farther, it gets getting kind of pulled away from, I think, what its North Star is. And you have these just weird elements, right? This is where that whole retconathon really starts with the Legion. And to me, right, when people say, like, Mark Waid is says very often in interviews, if you look, that the Legion has become so complex that people can't follow it. That's why sales are horrible. And I think this is where a lot of that complexity comes in because, and this is where Giffen and the Beer Bombs made the choice to do all this retconning. They did not have to do it, in my opinion. They could have just told the story they wanted to tell and just keep going on with life. But they went back and retconned all this other stuff. They were well-told stories, of course, but you had, things like, Valor Monel. You had the whole Mordru-verse saga that had, things kind of reset so that you didn't have the Time Trapper and instead you had Glorith and, all this other stuff. You had, Reflecto was actually a part of the team. I mean, it goes on, and I don't even want to really talk too much about the whole Sean Schwan Aaron thing and Lightning Lad and Prody. I mean, oh my God.
Yeah, well, I'll save that for me. I'm going to go off on that.
So that's where all this complexity gets in there. And so, and then you add the original Legionnaires on top of it. And it's like, oh my God, what are you doing here, guys? And so it just becomes this it's a well-intentioned but kind of unmanageable mess, if you ask me, with a lot of really good individual stories thrown in.
All right. That was nicer than I thought you would.
Oh, okay.
All right, Kirby, your turn.
I'll be the other end of everything here. So, after I got into Legion, I started collecting back issues, of whatever I could find. Of every other era we have talked about so far in other eras past, I could read a single issue, and I might not know the details of everything that's going on, but I could tell you what was happening in that issue. Not in 5 years later. 5 years later is so I finally finished it and reread it after discussing it. And again, I'm going to say this. Giffen is one of my favorite comic creators of all time. There's an asterisk. That is the 5 years later, which I cannot stand, and it actually infuriates me. It honestly loses me with the murder of Block, because it's supposed to be, this is what gets us all together again. But really, as it goes on, it's like, no, it really seems like it doesn't. It just like, we could have come in together. And again, all of the retcons, since the 70s, at the very least, comics have been written by fans, primarily. The Beer Bombs are fan fiction writers and not actual writers. They want their view of characters. Hey, we think that Lightning Lad has been Prody, which I'll let you get to, Ross. So we'll make Lightning Lad, the original Lightning Lad, a total jerk, so it fits our worldview. Hey, have you been a fan of Wildfire, Dawnstar, anyone created after Shooter? We don't care. They're not part of our Legion. So, yeah, the characters are been murdered on screen horribly, off screen horribly, mutilated and possessed, and it just reeks of Watchmen envy to me. Just all of the blocks of text as they're trying to restart the Legion, fill in the gaps of the prior 5 years, and then just, again, as Jim, you said, all of the constant retcons, and I really don't like Giffen's art in this era. It's just a complete mess, and Giffen doing a darker Legion is not bad inherently. The Legion, which is going pretty much concurrently, is actually a pretty good use.
Did he write all of that too?
He was a big writer, at least early on, and he had actual.
Okay. It was a good. I liked about a year, 2 years into 5 years. I was like reading Legion before. Yep. Because my take is, I liked it at the time because it was something new and different. I like Giffen's art at this style. I like to see an artist go screw it. I don't need it to, I like Neil Adams. I like Mike Grell, but I prefer cartoony or extravagant. I would take a Dave Gibbons or anyone else. But the thing is, I don't think it worked for everybody. I agree. It becomes more and more fan fiction. There's a lot of twiddling around with it, trying to fix it. I hadn't really thought about that. That's a Byrne thing. Is I don't like what someone else did, so I'm gonna fuck shit all over him.
I mean, it became kind of
wrong.
It kind of became an exercise of look how much we know about the Legion's history versus let's just focus on telling a really damn good story.
Yep.
Where you had, which gets me is because your predecessor, Levitz, had notebooks because he was a dork.
Yeah, right.
Of all the planets. He's us. More so. He had all this stuff. So that's why when he he doesn't have to re-world build. He just mentions stuff.
Right.
This planet, and where they think they had to twiddle, and it doesn't really lose me completely until they all have to have different names. They bring it
the
you know
Legion
it's
on
the
the
death
Run.
of a series.
Oh yeah,
the Legion on the Run, and you have to bring in 5 new members. You know a book is failing when that happens. It's the Mark Guggenheim Justice Society. It's like all of a sudden you're like, what? It's disaster. It's the kiss of death. I have not reread it, and I bought both the Omnis to reread, but I'm like, I'll do it in my great reread. But I know I will probably get through the second omnibus will be rough because it is.
Yeah.
I will say for batch 28, I prefer what editorial did. I think Giffen's was asinine.
Right.
That make these are the Legionnaires, the other ones are clones. No, that's Bobby Ewing in the fucking shower.
Mm-hmm.
It is lazy ass writing, and I understand why everybody has a problem. A lot of people have a problem with 5 years later. It is. It really kind of just messes everything up. It just muddies it. It's unfixable.
Giffen blows up the earth for no reason.
Yeah.
Well, at
this
point, right, this is where, one of the things that we're kind of talking over here is the fact that as this title went on, editorial hated it more and more and kept on bothering the creators about it. And this is basically Giffen's way of tweaking his nose at and giving the finger to the powers that be, right? That's exactly why he blew up the earth, right? As part of that whole process. It was like, nobody's going to notice, so I'm just going to go ahead and do it anyway.
Yeah.
And again, he's doing JLI at the same time, so, like, it's inside of you, there are 2 wolves.
Yeah.
Oh, and he's one of the highest paid writers in the business at this point. Because all his books are hits, and he's right. I mean, and I think a lot of it lasts longer because of his name. And I remember people being happy when the beer bombs and the art and the new artist came in.
I just can't co-sign the beer bombs at all. I'm sorry.
But I think a lot of people were just happy to see. They were hoping it would go back to something else, and then they saw it. I think people felt it was so fan fiction-y. It was like, oh, please just go do Old Legion. I don't want dark and gritty. If I wanted that, I'd read something else. And it's just all over the place. I wouldn't say it is. Kirby, you're not far off saying it's fan fiction.
Oh, totally. I agree with that.
It is. It's just rough.
Yeah.
And then we get 0 Hour, which is an event I love. I think it brings my favorite character to existence. And it allows them to take what little good elements that have come from the Batch 28 and create the next era, the reboot. I'm gonna let Jim go first because this is his bit.
Yeah, thank you, Ross. So yeah, this is where I came on board, and so at the end of the day, what we know now, like looking back after all this time, this was the attempt to restart everything. So Mark Waid, who was very much into the plotting of 0 Hour itself, also was very central to the plotting of the first year of the restarted Legion's continuity, and so. They essentially wanted to say, let's start the Legion. It's become, quote unquote, too complex because of all the stuff that we had happened over the last 5 years of publishing history. And let's start over and let's restart the Legion and start from square one so we don't have any of this baggage going on. We can create our own mythology. And, to a large degree, I think they did. And what they ended up doing, I think the first year was a combination of both some really amazing storytelling that I just look back on. I always reread that first year almost every year, almost annually, and dashes in a little bit of Ultimate Legion into there too. So, not a little bit in the first year, but much more as the years progress into the first, like to the 1996, 97 or so. They do a lot of retelling of the classic Silver Age stories as part of this, and for the most part, they do a pretty good job. There are some stinkers in there. I'm not going to lie, but they're for the most part, they tell some really clear, fun stories, and that's why I really liked it. It was fun when when I would read back at these 5 year later stories. they just seem to be just way down in angst, which, and then I read these stories and then, hey, this is a good time. I'm really loving this. I can't understand what I'm reading over here. So that's why I kind of really fell in love with it. Plus, you have Jeff Moyes' art, which is just amazing, and I still get commissions from him as often as I can. And so anyway, I could gush on probably for another whole hour on this, so I'll let Kirby or Ross take over.
Can I go?
Go ahead, Kirby.
Okay,
yeah, go ahead.
So I just got my blood pressure up. No, I love this era. I love this era top to bottom. Just the Moy art just brings so much fun life and energy to it. This era I always think of is like the most relationship heavy, and that's what you want to read in comics.
Oh my God, yeah.
Why you care about every single member of the Legion here? Like, they bring in XS, who's one of my favorites, again here, and
some of the ones, the new members in this era are amazing. Monstrous, Thunder,
Kinetics.
I love Censor.
The Snake Censor.
I love her.
Yeah, the Kinetics. You had Gates.
Gates, yep.
Gates, a great character. It is. My take on this is, it's just they don't reinvent the wheel. They just tell the story differently. Yeah. It is the Legion, for the most part. The Element Lad in this era, I never warmed to him 100%, and then what they do to him
later on, yeah.
In the second half, we'll talk about that. Is just fucked up and awful.
Oh, it's horrible.
I don't mind. But I understand doing something fucked up and awful to a character sometimes. The story, you have to have a Pharaoh Lad.
Oh, well, look at this. They did that with Violet in that first section of the reboot, right? They turned her into the Emerald Empress, basically, right? So that's similar kind of thing. And and to that point, right? I guess one thing to keep in mind here is when the reboot started. So Casey Carlson, who was the Legion editor towards the end, so after the Earth blew up, I think that's around the time that Casey became the editor of the Legion title and the Legionnaires title. And so he was very much involved in the launch of the reboot as well. And he was the editor of the title up through Legion of Superheroes number 100. And he's a big fan, right? So he cares for these characters, cares for this title, and wants to make sure that it's they're doing the best that they can from a story perspective, right? So all these things, that's kind of why that first couple of years, 94 to 96, 95 to 97, something like that, are very, very solid stories. I mean, like I said, there's some misfires there, right? They go into the 20th century, or half the team does anyway. That was.
See, I kind of like that because it tied into that era of Superman. I want to talk about that. I think what I like about this, and they emulate what was going on in Superman with the Triangle era. They found a way to have different creative teams tell a continuous story. From one book to another. I love that there was a Legion symbol with with the number in it, so you knew how to read it. I love that format, and I think the post-crisis Superman really hits its groove at this time with
absolutely,
the Triangle era,
post-death of Superman,
and I think Legion is too. And I think what they realize, and a lot of books in DC at this time were way more the absolute opposite of 5 years later and dark.
Yes.
They were fun, colorful, character-driven superhero stories. Because there's 4 or 5 writers on the Superman books. That was the same guy in every comic. And I think what they did with these books is it was the Legion. I think of this the same as I think of the original Legion. It's the
importance of having a strong line editor when you have a multiple book team, right, or character. So, I mean, Superman, you had to have somebody who could really make sure that there was a clear vision for 4 independent threads, but that we wove together in a way that you could figure out. Same deal with Legion and Legionnaires, and this is why KC was so good. And it's really a shame that he had to leave after LSH 100, because after that, the next couple of years after that really don't go too well as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, but there's some good.
I don't even remember how bad. But it's been so long. What's in the back end of this?
So as part of the whole thing, Violet becomes evil, and then she sends half the team back in the 20th century. They have shenanigans in the 20th century. Eventually, everybody comes back. Violet comes back to normal. So LSH 100 is when everybody comes back. LSH 100, incidentally, the only issue 100 that the Legion has ever had in its entire history. So after that point, KC has to leave. Mike McAvaney, who's I believe he's editor of Superboy, but also he's the assistant editor of the Legion titles, is now appointed the editor. And it seems like everything. I don't know exactly what the specifics were, but it seems like everything was kind of in a bit of a rush, because after that you have kind of a Dark Circle story that doesn't seem to work really well. At the end of 100, there's this kind of interesting MacGuffin of a story where called the Fires of Creation, where Mon-El and Andromeda go to investigate the space anomaly, and that just turns into be this weird energy source that people use, and the story kind of goes nowhere. And there's a whole bunch of other stories like that, which you kind of see the creatives seem to be like they're spinning the wheels a little bit. The art, of course, Moy's art is fantastic, and one of the reasons why I love it. And Roger Stern and Carmela Merlot's characterization in Legionnaires was really, really great. And that was the other reason I kept coming back to this era. But overall, it didn't have the same kind of pop.
I forgot Stern wrote some.
Yeah. Oh, he was there for years.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, was it? Yeah.
I do want to mention.
It's been so long since I reread that, and I think and then because it goes into Abnett and Lanning.
Yes.
And becomes a very different book. I enjoyed the Abnett Lanning era, but I felt I was reading a Jim Starlin comic. That's what they do.
So.
But I understand it's jarring.
Very jarring
compared to it is there is it's I keep forgetting they're the same era.
Yep.
It's a science fiction story. It's not a Legion story.
That's exactly right. I can completely agree with Kirby on that. The Abnett and Lanning and Quappel were good science fiction storytellers, but not Legion stories, because the Legionnaires were not. They weren't the same. They weren't the same personalities as we had seen for 5-6 years at that point, and now I will say this about Quappel's art. I absolutely hated Legion of the Damned because I just felt
it's awful.
His audition as an artist was horrible. That said, I loved him by the time he was done with his run.
It's a dramatic
he brought his indie kind of fail in, and he started to find his this is how you draw superhero guys. He's still doing them, and I'll buy him whenever he does it.
Absolutely.
I want to say something about Legion Lost as an event. If they had been doing, I think it would be a better book in a lot of ways. I like the idea. This is them being thrown in the past, having a separate book for whatever to show a story of taking people of virtue and bucking them up and see how they hold their morals, how they try to stay who they are. But I understand, and it would more. I enjoy it, but I really understand why people. If it was an Elseworld, I think it would be a little better. Because I don't agree with some of the stuff they do. Killing Monstrous was just fucking lazy.
Yeah, and
I would have killed if I'm going to kill somebody. I'm going to kill someone. I'm going to kill an A-lister. Well, don't kill the B-lister.
Yeah, I wasn't
kill the A-lister.
I wasn't a fan of Monstrous, but it's like, she deserved better than that. She really did.
But she was such a good character. They had created such a this big giant, the super powered, the super strong ones were woman, but is still just this sweet, warm, young woman.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's why I loved her, is superhero power. I'm big, I'm bad, I beat people up. But, hey, let's go have milkshakes. Let's be, I liked her.
Well, interestingly enough, on the Usenet threads at the time, I believe it was Andy Lanning said that he was told that Monstrous was a character that needed to be killed off.
Why?
Well,
I don't.
My understand. So the way I would look at it, he never really said why. But if I think about it, right, and I'm looking at creating a dramatic story, right, you need to have somebody. You have to show that the stakes are high, so somebody has to die. So Monstrous is going to be the character to do it because she's the newbie and nobody really at the time, not many people actually liked her, and a lot of people were complaining about her on the online forums.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
Why? I loved her.
Oh well, they just didn't like the portrayal or whatever. They also had the same problem with kinetics, and they kind of ran her through the gauntlet as well. So.
Yeah.
Don't listen to the fanboys. They're all angry little incels. Whatever. I mean, because I think, and I love that's my favorite new characters are all the females.
Yeah.
If you notice.
Kid Quantum.
Thunder. Oh my God.
Like she's the best character of that because like
she's the Monica Rambeau. She's the Monica Rambeau.
Huh.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. Like because my favorite Avenger is always Hawkeye, but Monica's his boss.
Mm-hmm.
If I have to do the lineup, they're on the team. They have to be. But yeah, I like the concept of Legion Loft. I enjoyed it when I read it, but my problems with continuity is I didn't care that much about this Element Lad. Him dying, him going crazy, I am absolutely fine with, because I see Jan going, oh no, you all are going to sleep for 1,000 years, and I'll guard you. But there has to be a consequence to that decision.
Yeah.
And madness is it, I'm fine. But putting Garth in his body to bring Garth back.
Yeah,
that was
just got weird. I mean, that's with Element Lad. I mean, they had him like doing all these calculations. I mean, as far as I was aware, Brainiac 5 was the only person who could do like multidimensional physics and stuff like that. So it's little things like that bother me. I'm a continuity grognard, and so that kind of stuff just gets at me at my craw a lot of times, which I should let go. I know. But then, but once it got into the actual monthly, you had Legion World, which is actually pretty good, although I felt like
Legion.
It was a little bit heavy on the angst. I thought they could have lightened it up a little bit. And then the ongoing, same kind of deal with the actual continuation of the Legion, right? Same kind of deal. A lot of angsty, overwrought, world-busting events, that needed to kind of be. Somebody needed to rein in Abnett and Landing here, because you had like the destruction of the Earth by Ra's al Ghul, for God's sakes. Don't get me started on that. And then
I liked Ra's al Ghul.
I
don't
like
think the
Ra's
story
al Ghul
was
in
good.
this scenario, not in this.
No. I like the idea of him still being alive. I did, but I agree that the story wasn't a good Ra's al Ghul.
Yeah, and then then you have Robotica right on the heels of it. So here comes the Earth again, getting paved over. I'm like, okay, guys, I get you like Warhammer 40,000 and all that stuff. That's fine, but you're again, to Kirby's point, you're making these into sci-fi stories, not Legion stories, right?
Yeah, and it's one big epic after another. It's one big traumatic thing after another. There's
never
them
time
just
to
going.
breathe. Yeah,
right.
I know exactly. I'm a big Avengers fan, and Jed McKay's whatever his name is, he's writing it out. It's terrible because it's all big action in space things, and it's like, that's not why I read this book. I read this book for the characters, and there's nothing. It's very image kind of oriented, and I'm not a big fan of, I mean, I like the image creators in a way, but that 90s getting into it where everything is big and over the top and epic, let's have a character piece.
Yeah.
That's why this book that's what makes Legion, and I think it just peters out. It just slowly peters out. Yeah. Even I, who like Abnett and Landing and like the art, was like,
yeah,
I'll read that later.
I have a personal opinion that I think, or a personal theory rather, that for Legion especially, just because there's so many characters, you really have to rotate the writers out every 3 years. Otherwise, they start kind of getting stale. And I think this kind of seems to hold true, right? Where we have, from the reboot on, right? You have the whole, actually even 5 years later, right? You go a couple of years and then the wheels start to spin, and then reboot. You have literally the same creative team for like 5 years, when they probably should have, maybe eased back a couple of years prior. Abnett and Landing, they go through about 3 years, and about halfway through their run of the Legion, we're okay. Here we go. We're starting to spin tires again.
Yep. I do want to say before we leave this era is the costume design for them, where they have taken everything that's come before, but given them like a uniform to where you can tell, like, oh, this is a team. Where
the belt with the L on it, I love it.
Yeah, with the belt, the L,
and the stripes.
yeah, it's like if you're going to adapt the Legion, look to this era for costume design, because it it's just honestly the most streamlined and the best.
Yeah, from a team perspective, I agree.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that poster that with them all standing like in the big group photo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just works. It works. So next up is Reboot, and I'll start on this. I had tried to read this when it came out, and I was just I love Wade. I just felt I was going, okay, I've become too old for this. This is a bunch of teenagers. They got an old white guy writing teenagers, and I didn't like it. And then Jim and me met, and he got me to read it, and then we talked about it. And having read it in order, and I have a buddy Ken who said it's actually really good. And I said, you hate Legion. It's actually, I like it because I like this Legion because they are angry teenagers flipping a bird at the adults. And I enjoyed them. I mean, I've read the first first year and a half, and it's really good.
Yes.
It's an acceptable substitute for Legion because it's trying. I think my big pet peeve with it is you bring too many characters in at the beginning. Some of them are not. I need to read the rest of it.
Yeah.
At least I think I will enjoy most of it with Supergirl through. I know I hate the Shooter stuff because I'd read that.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to give him a chance and I hate it.
Bedard's okay.
But I like it. I think it's not bad. It just didn't have any staying power. And once Wade leaves, I think it kind of goes.
So here's the deal. The first 34 issues were the first 30 issues are Wade, right? And they're like I agree. It's good storytelling. I'm not as sold on are these guys the Legion because they never really explain why they formed. There's no origin story for this team. So you don't really know why they're doing what they're doing.
Yeah, because they've been around for a while when it starts.
Yeah, but the stories are damn good. Now that said, this is in the second or third year of this book. This is when the Lightning Legion starts over in JSA, right? So this proceeds to piss Mark Waid off because he's like, "Why the hell didn't you tell me you're not doing another damn Legion when I'm spent a lot of time with Barry Kitson, who does great art on this, by the way." That you were doing this other Legion and you didn't even tell me, and so screw you guys, I'm going home.
Yeah.
So he leaves, and then Tony Bedard takes over for a bit with another really good story, and then it goes back to Shooter, and then it just kind of goes away.
It's crap. It's garbage. I mean, I had to say it. It's some of the worst that the Justice League's descendants are murdering. It's just crappy. I'm a big Tony Bedard fan. I like his comics. He wrote. I read a bunch of his stuff and enjoyed it. And so I want to read more of it. But I don't think it. I think it is a nice imitation. So Kirby, any final thoughts on Reboot?
So for me, Reboot, I hadn't actually read until last year, and I was able to get all of it because it's only 50 issues in a solid chunk. So I was Jim held my hand as I was kind of going through it on the Discord. And for me, I was thinking, my main thought was, I would have been the target demo when this book was coming out if I had had regular access. And for me, it's like, there are some very good stories. Like the Triplicate Girl origin is really, really good. It's a great story. But I feel like I would have read the first 6 issues and then gone, where's that next Hellboy trade? Like, there's some good stories, but it just never really kind of comes together. And if I had read those back then, when they were coming out, I don't know if I would be here talking with you guys right now, because it would have been like, oh yeah, I read that Legion thing. It was fine. And that's kind of the thing with this, even discounting all of the editorial interference, it just kind of comes around with like, fine, like it's good. Like the Wade Kitson, it's not either their best work, but it's neither any of their worst work either. It's a Legion that probably should have, again, maybe if you had Dan Didio not being a jerk for whatever reason, it could have, lasted longer than, 50 issues.
Yeah. I mean, ironically, it's when I first started I was reading them pretty much straight through until about this time the Supergirl stuff started, and it didn't really hold me. But which was a shame, because the issues between like 20 and 30 are amazing. I mean, I was I kept on, I was trying to keep my pace and doing like one issue a night. I was like, okay, I'm reading the rest of these right now because they're that good.
Yeah, that's one of the best uses of the Dominators in forever.
100%.
Yeah, I need to finish reading that and just not read the end, not read the shooter stuff. All right, so now we're gonna go into Retro Boot. I'll start. I like that Superman story where the Legion comes back by Johns.
Yep.
I like.
It's a great story. It's a great story.
It is the Justice Society. Them. Well, yes. My nerd boy goes crazy. Yes.
Yep.
The stuff in Action Comics. That's that. What you're having. That trade.
With the Gary Frank art.
It's great.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and I'm a Jeff Johns apologist. He's written stories I don't like, but I just think he knows how to do it. He doesn't reinvent the wheel. He has an Avengers run with Copel that is just it needs to be reprinted. It's so good. But I do like this, and I jumped in and out of all the stuff. I've read it all. It just never stuck. I think I want to I'm going to get to it and reread it. I don't think any of it's terrible.
No, it's actually
after that one, Levitz, it's fine, but it just. And then New 52, I like the Legion Lost stuff a little bit as a sidebar. Yeah. I don't think it needed its own series. And I like some of the artists, and I like that they brought in new characters, but that's about it. And none of it stuck. Yeah. I think that's the new character designs are cool.
I would say that I think the Superboy and the Legion story that you were just holding up there, I think that did stick. That was really good, right? And this was. Yeah, exactly. And this was happening, again, around the time of the actual end of the 3-boot, right? And, it's funny. There's a 3-boot story, I think it's issue 14 or 15 maybe, where it's like this the 3-boot characters are telling stories of other legions, right? And so you see all these, 70s and 80s Legion stories. You're like, oh, my gosh, that's the Legion I really want to see when I'm reading the 3-boot. Meanwhile, it's like, the whole actual 3-boot's running, and they're running the Lightning Saga, and then this story, and it was awesome. I loved it. I ate this up with a spoon when it came out. And and this, of course, then led to Legion of Three Worlds, which then led to the actual. It's crazy George Perez stuff, right?
Like, amazing. Oh my God.
I love Legion of Three Worlds, and to say that, why wouldn't it? There's a Justice Unit. Why wouldn't it be? I always kind of wanted them to kind of fix continuity and say that the Legion we had been reading in the Bronze and Silver Age was the Legion of Earth 2, of the old Earth 2. And that's why there was a fucking Superboy.
Okay.
That would be too easy, man. It's too easy.
Yeah, no.
Well, no, don't go there. So that's wait, but let's get. But Kirby, what did you think about the Retro Boot?
So, like I said, when Jared got me on Deletion, this was I think the second trade I read. So with
it's a good second.
Yep.
So it was one of those rereading. It's like, or looking at now, it's like, oh, who are some of my favorite characters? Wildfire, Dawnstar. Oh, they're prominent in this book. And this was the Legion I was reading as it was coming out for the first time. So, there's some hits and misses. Levitz had been out of the writing game a little too long, I think.
Yeah.
But and I dropped it at some points just because I was in college and didn't have the money sometimes, which, hey, that happens. But it was overall good. I don't think. I want to know why they thought we needed to bring Earthman back as a member of the Legion, because him as
and I don't get why. I understand why. I understand what story they wanted to. I understood that they wanted to show redemption, and I like redemption stories. Earthman did it because he was damaged. He's not Pwahaha evil.
Yeah. He's
just fucked up, and I like that. It's just not. It just never gels. I don't see Shadowlass dumping Mon-El.
No, especially for this guy.
If you got a Bentley, you're not buying the dirty pickup truck with beer cans in it.
That's right.
You're not.
Let's actually do a quick shout out here too, because during the time of the first part of the Retribute, so Retribute is like the original relaunch of Legion, and then there's the New 52 version, right? pre-New 52, there was also Adventure Comics that was telling the stories of that, essentially that universe's younger versions of Legionnaires. So
that's a separate trade. It's great.
Yeah. Unfortunately, you had the whole thing with Saturn Girl sleeping with Cosmic Boy and all that.
Oh, I forgot about that. Why did you remind me?
At least they didn't make him a three-way. I mean,
actually would be more comfortable with that.
No, it's like when I was reading Hickman's X-Men, and they kind of hint that Scott, Logan, and Jean are having a three-way, and I'm like going, no, because I need to eat. I'd be able to eat again.
Right.
No, but I mean, I like Dragon Mage. I want to kind of go back and reread that stuff and see if it holds up a little bit.
It holds up a lot better.
Earthman is in there. Did it? I bet it does. I bet it does.
Let's put it this way: even though they never go out, they still, even though it's the mid 2010s or whatever, or the 2010 era, they still never say Shrinking Violet is gay. Even though they basically say, everything, all the images basically say, she and Lightlass are kind of having a relationship.
We don't say it out loud.
But they never say it out loud.
Because it's like, I just immediately walked on, they're a couple. Like, okay, so.
Yeah. Well, that's, I like some of the artists, too. I think some of the artists they had.
Yildiray Cinar, I think, is on there.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I think it's something I need to reread. Maybe I'll jump ahead and do a big reread. I've got that. I bought a complete run during the pandemic in singles.
Yeah, I need to reread too. I just didn't have time before this to get started, and that'll be one you guys will see me posting on the Discord, so you'll know when I'm in the middle of rereading it.
Oh, tell me when you start. I might join you and actually participate. Hey, Hugabug, hold on a second. Okay. Hugs, look at me. Hugs, treat. Hugabug.
Timestamp.
Yep, timestamp. Ross, I want to do a Warlord reread. Then I'll get to the retro boot. So give me a couple months.
Oh, yeah. No. Yeah, hold on a second. 9 minutes. Okay. I've got taken my notes. All right. So let's briefly bash the shit out of Brian Michael Bendis, as comic fans are to do.
Damn it, Ross. I'm out of beer.
I don't want to crack another one on the mic again.
No. Well, I'm going to start with it. I liked Millennium. I had the art, the designs look great. I had high hopes. The first arc doesn't bug me. Nothing fucking happens. Nothing. Nope. It is a waste of good character designs. It is putting the cart before the horse by just jumping to the end. Here are all these great Doc Fate. An alien Doc Fate in the Legion, perfect sense. A Green Lantern in a different color, perfect sense. All these tweaks didn't. Most of the redesigns are great. The art was good.
Art was great.
Yeah.
But the second story and the Justice League team up, nothing happens.
I read that first Justice League story. The next week, I never do this. They asked, how was what you read last week? I'm like, you guys have my money. You have it. That's fine. I want my time back. And I have not read the last 5 issues of that. And I just got to tell this story real quick. So around 2012, 2013, JR and I and a group of friends were doing a Legion in the 41st Century game, which I played. One of my characters was a Dr. Fate.
Oh, cool.
And Aquaman in Atlantis played heavily into the formation of our Legion. So when that first issue of the regular series came out, and it's like, hey, can we sue? And when that 12 issues was done, I called him up. I'm like, we did it better. And I say that with no ego. We did it better.
Right. Oh my gosh.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's just it just nothing happened. It was just it's everything I hate about modern comics.
Yeah. I mean, I was, I guess there was the main run, then Future State, which was kind of horrible. I mean,
what was that?
It was better from a story perspective because it was tighter. Right, I didn't agree with what.
Yeah, I thought I didn't. It was a weird Legion. It was like a what if Legion.
But it was a tighter story because he had 2 issues in which he had to tell us he was constrained. So that he had a little bit of a kind of a leash around him for that. The art, I didn't like Rossmo's art at all. I know some people really love it. That's just not for me. No. But I was almost physically angry at the end of Justice League versus Legion. just because that last issue, I'm like, how dare you drag on 5 issues and then dump 2 pages of exposition that explains what's happened before you end this thing. I was just so angry, and I'm like, okay, that got.
I think you and me
read
message each other about. I think you and me message each other about how bad that was.
We did a podcast episode on this, actually.
Oh yeah, that's right, we did.
The end of it.
Okay, it's just because because we felt we had. I forgot about that. We had chatted. It was like we have to talk about it because it's so bad.
I try to forget as much about that series as I can as well. So.
Oh my God, it's awful.
The problem with it is kind of twofold. One, there is no difference in any of the characters' voices. It's all the voice of Bendis. Yep. And with Legion, we've talked for 2 hours about all the different relationships. No, they all just sound like Bendis. And two, this is for me is I was willing to deal with the aged Jonathan Kent, even though it robbed him of his personality. If this Legion was good, I could make that sacrifice, but it wasn't, and I just doubled down on my anger of his whole run. So
I like the idea of Damian coming. Why wouldn't Jonathan Kent take, if he's going to be the Superboy?
Yeah, that could have worked.
Take his best friend.
Yeah, but
it made perfect sense.
Well, they did have the one issue where they did that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was I thought it would be that, but it just I don't know. So I wanted to ask each of you. Because I've said this over and over again, with every recreation of Legion, it's diminishing returns. Because they just stray too far. They try to reinvent it. They try to do the early 21st century version of it. It is what it is. It's a bunch of young people going out to do good, and they're all pretty much have good motives, and they're aliens. So it has to have that Star Trek infinite diversity.
Right.
Right.
In different forms. You have to have it. That's why it works. It's not that hard. I just want to ask each of you, if you were going to be the editor, how would you bring it back?
Okay, so I think has been the best Legion story since 2010, 2012. Dan Jurgens did a done-in-one Legion story of from the 70s era. It was just a cute Legion adventure as part of one of the Walmart 100-page collections. I would just give here, just do some stories. Don't worry about setting a team up. Just have some fun little adventures that are accessible. Just make them adventure stories first. And worry about continuity and all of that second. If it sells, great, we'll expand upon it, and we'll figure things out. Because you know what, if we just make stuff up as we go along, that's how the Legion got started, and that's how we can continue to keep it going. I don't know if that would work, but that's just kind of my head.
Well, no, I mean, I like what DC's been doing with 8-issue runs on stuff. Just do 8 issues. And Green Arrow was doing so well, they made it a regular.
Yep.
Kind of do it. What I would do is kind of what the Retro Boot did. Is pick a point of time and jump back in. Don't connect it to anything going on in the regular continuity. They never go back in time. Superboy does not visit them anymore. Superman, they're cut off from their Superman. We're part of the multiverse. This is a future where there was a Superboy. The crisis happened. The Magic War happened, and we're rebuilding. We remember it all. And have them, the Magic World happens, and you have them rebuild. And then you kind of just, like they did in Starman, Time Past stories.
Yep.
We're rebuilding the Legion. And slowly reintroduce the characters as they reform it. And just make sure you have a good writer and a good editor who want to work together and really be a collaborative.
Yep.
And make the writer in charge, not the artist.
Yes.
So,
and make it someone who writes a little heavy-handed. That would be personally what I would like. What I think the best model would be, hire someone good and start.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I'm going to pull ideas from both of you guys here for me. So, because one of the issues that we really have is that you all have all these different versions, And in some cases, you have, especially when you talk about the reboot and the pre-New 52 era, things like that, they each have unique characters, right? Even though, like, for example, with Legion of Three Worlds, they pulled Gates and XS over into the quote-unquote, main Legion book at the time, but they never really used them that well.
I know, which is
right. So what I would do is do exactly what you said, Ross, right? And then, and use that cutoff point at whatever point in time that is. But then bring the unique characters from places like the reboot, which I think is the only version that has like the really good unique characters.
Oh, yeah.
Your XS, your Kinetics, Monstrous, which I think actually they kind of did. There was a Justice League story in the mid 2010s that kind of had had Legion at the end. You had this kind of cameo where you had all these other Legionnaires from like the various eras kind of there. So you saw Kinetics and you saw Monstrous and all these ones who had been unfairly killed, right?
Yeah.
And so you have these here so that you can both have the touch points of the characters that people know and love from since 1959, but also still have these more diverse characters as part of the group. So you have Gear, you have Kid Quantum 2, you have Computo, right? As to really bolster the diversity, and you have a lot of different age ranges. So you have the older crowd and the younger crowd. So there's a lot of ways that they could do this. But overall, the most important thing that they have to do is get a writer who can tell compelling stories. And without that, it's not even worth doing.
And a specific type of writer. You need a Wade. You need a Stern. I mean, not Roger Stern now, but you need. I'm trying to think of people like who could probably do it. I'd like to see I'd like to see Hickman do it. It'd be big.
That would be.
It'd be big.
It would be big. It would be closer to. I feel like the Abnan Landing, because that would be a big sci-fi story first. I feel, and I love Hickman, but yeah. So that'd be a good one.
But he did FF and he didn't stray from family.
No, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, I mean, it's because his FF he's like, oh, I'm writing about a family. I'm going to get more family members. That's all he does. He wants a big cast. Yeah. He's always writing Legion. I want to ask you, Jim. You're not a big Avengers event reader, and you're reading Infinity, right?
Yeah, I'm in the middle of. I just finished the Infinity chapter, which is the third volume of the Hickman run, and there's so many characters. It has the Imperial Guard, for God's sakes, which is basically the Legion in Marvel.
The Legion, okay, but see what I mean? He's always trying to do Legion. I think that'd be fine, but I think I'm looking at my shelves and trying just to have someone. I wouldn't mind John's doing. He's just never going to write He's not going to write a mainstream comic for a long time. Because the Ghost Machine stuff he's doing or Ghost Protocol is fucking.
It's been really good.
Geiger's amazing. Junkyard Joe is, oh my God.
That's the best one, honestly.
But I mean, I think you could I'd like to see Busick take a shot at starting it.
Ooh.
I mean, I think Busick he could start and look what he did with Astro City in 6 issues.
So my pull for who should do it next is going to be Josie Campbell, because she did the script for the movie that came out. I know the movie's a little bit divisive between a bunch of folks, but
the one that just came out, the one that's part of the Tomorrowverse.
Yeah. So okay.
The Supergirl one.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I enjoyed
it's
it.
absolutely fine. I have no problem with it. It's a Legion story.
She is
they got
absolutely. She knows the Legion. She knows the history. She's respectful of it.
Mm-hmm.
So for my money, I definitely want Josie to do it.
All right.
That's a good choice, because I've watched. I'm gonna get them all. I don't have the Long Halloween, and I haven't watched the Superman one, but I bought the Justice Society one, and I bought the Legion one, and I like both of them. And I bought the Crisis on Infinite Earth one. It was really good.
Oh, really? I haven't heard it. I've heard mixed things on it, so I haven't watched it yet.
Well,
I'm a little mixed on it.
I loved it. I think if you're going to adapt it, that's the way you adapt it. You just don't cherry pick characters. Yeah. It's a very unique universe. I would like to watch them. There's an order you're kind of supposed to watch them in. It's like the Superman one, and then there's one where
there's a Green Lantern.
None of them take place. The Green Lantern one is amazing.
I really like that one.
That was but none of them are in the same universe, Jim. Every one is a different universe, and it all leads to Crisis. So, and there's no time travel. Like when Flash goes back in time, he goes to another dimension. Mm-hmm. Okay. And that's the Justice Society one. So, but How would you, I think she'd be a good choice. I'd like to see that. If not, what I'd like DC to do is, they're getting back into the trade business hard and heavy. I watched a lot of near mint condition. They're reprinting the Jeff Johns Green Lantern trades. They're going to finish it. They never did it in trade. They only got up to 5. They're going to do 6 and 7 or whatever. Get all of the Jeff Johns Green Lantern in reasonable trades. I'm going to buy this. I want to get his Flash because I didn't finish reading all that. So the cheaper ways to get it. Do it, damn. Where is? Okay, you've done 5 years later. I understand it was kitsch. It's had a kitsch, kind of something to put out. But why haven't they done
the Baxter series, which is when it was at its most popular?
No, the first 2 Baxters are out in trade. The first year Baxters are in trades. I've got them, but they're ancient.
Right.
Basically, I'm looking with Omnis and everything at archives. There are hardcovers that start with Adventure 257 and end with The Curse.
Right.
That's everything. Now, just do compendiums now or something. What about when it went to Baxter, the 12 issues of Tales of the Legion?
You could easily.
That's never been reprinted. And where does it go?
In between.
Where does it get read?
Of Baxter, sort of. It's weird.
I like that book. I like those 12 issues. I thought they were fine. I liked the artist on it. But where is it? They need to put some stuff in. Just
Agreed.
put some stuff in. It's just not the Great Darkness Saga. Why don't you just pick up where you left off? Mm-hmm. My Curse is a trade. I'd love to find the hardcover, if it even was a hardcover. But or could we get a 3rd volume of Legionnaires?
Oh yeah, that'd be
3rd, 4th, 5th. I'd like to reread it. I'd like to have a physical copy of all Legion.
Me too.
Yeah,
and it not be in floppies. I mean, I don't want to count how many I have. I think I counted my Legion. I had my Justice Society. I have 35 Justice Society trades. Not count. Oh, that counts the All Stars comics. But it's just I would like more of them. And I think it's a missed opportunity. I think the other thing is they fucked it up so bad they're afraid to ever do it again.
Yeah, well, we'll see. Yeah. We'll see. They're definitely in the mood of
let's see what
letting it sit fallow.
Yeah,
Well, I like what they've given. Basically, the World's Finest stuff with Wade is not part of the main universe.
Right.
They're kind of hedging their bets.
Right.
Oh God! And the World's Finest Teen Titans. If you want to retro boot Titans, that's the
how you do
to do it with. It was really good. Yeah. And he's going to be writing Absolute. So let's see. I don't think it's a cosmic event. I just think he's writing a big ass story.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I don't know how many horses need to drag Mark Waid to do the Legion again, because I don't think that's ever going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, something put it in that universe and just let him be the line producer. Like, hey, you find somebody. There's some good stuff. I think DC's doing better than Marvel with quality of book right now, but I think they're both hit or miss. It's just they don't know what to do. They don't know what the market is. I talked to Pat at the comic shop. It's not a great time for comics financially. It's just not for store owners. I'm glad everybody went and had spent money, and I saw the people from Comic Book Couples Counseling talking. This isn't about it. This is not a fan appreciation day. This is a brick and mortar appreciation day.
Yep.
And I had to beg my wife, hey, can I have a little bit of our money so I can get $40? You want $52? Well, I got a whole omnibus for $50. And it's Herb Trimp and Marie Severin. She doesn't know what that means, but I'm going to sit down and look at some beautiful 70s Hulk.
Nice.
What did you? What did you get?
I got the last Flash volume. I needed a Jeremy Adams run. I got the Black Hammer Omnibus.
Is that volume 1?
Yes.
Okay.
A Godzilla collection. And
cool.
And a cheap copy of Creepy.
Oh, cool. And I really hope I'm batting 1,000 and you love Black Hammer.
Yeah, Ross. Eventually, you're gonna strike out. It hasn't happened yet, but.
Yeah. No. I'm being careful. I think you'll like it. It's the reason I always, whenever he's at GalaxyCon, he signs something new. Jeff Lemire I will read anything he does. and I haven't read. I would like to read some of his more of his mainstream stuff because that's what I haven't read. I'd like to read his Justice League Dark.
I remember really liking that run.
I like the concept of Justice League Dark a great deal. Those are two omnis I would like to get just so I could read it one day. What did you get?
Well, other than so I showed you guys I got the Fantastic Four Hickman first volume, and then I got the first Invincible volume, the first Invincible Omni, because I've always wanted to read it. So.
Oh, the compendium.
Yes. Yeah. This guy.
I hadn't read it, dude. I hadn't read it. It's a lot in what God. It's thick.
It's the phone book.
It's
oh
my! There are 3 of those, and then the small one for the Worlds of. I read the first 2. I love it. It goes up and down, but it is the first thing I read it. I read the first one in about 3 weeks. I would have to stop because it's hard. It's a lot, but it's a hyperviolent.
Yeah.
But it's still just like a great Marvel. I think it's more Marvel than DC.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fun. Yeah. It's fun. I like Kirkman. I read all of Firepower. If you ever, that is so good. It is so good. And another book I was reading Void Rivals. I might, when they start collecting the Intergen universe that he is in charge of, the Hasbro stuff, I might read it because I've enjoyed what I have. So, all right, guys. Thank you. This is an extra long 100th episode. So I hope people are patient. If I may have to divvy it up. I will decide because it's well over 2 hours.
Part 1, part 2.
Even with editing.
Yep.
Part 1, part 2. So before we go, any recommendations, Jim?
I mean, I guess other than what we've already been talking about, I mean, obviously tons of Legion, and then the World's Finest stuff, man. I'm totally digging pretty much everything that's the World's Finest title right now.
Yeah, it's so good. I get it when it comes out in hardback because it's so. I bought the first hardback because it was on sale. I went, I'm gonna have it all in this so I can reread it over and over again.
100%.
But I get a good discount at Velocity. They're very nice to me. What about you, Kirby?
So co-sign to everything Jim just said. I'm also probably going to be starting a big Warlord reread because I love me some Sword and Sorcery and I love Mike Grell, his writing and his art. So I recommend that. And that's another series that you should do a big reprint of. So
that you could get it all in one omni.
Really?
If DC puts out 1,500 page ones, man, they're bricks. Yeah. Those 5 years later ones, man, you could kill somebody with one of those.
Yeah.
And the Who's Who and the JLI. The third and final JLI is coming out. I can't wait. The Secret Six one's fat.
Oh, that's, yeah.
Hitman's coming out. The Garth Ennis, Joel McCrae book, Hitman. I'm going to get that one. I'm really interested in that. For me, my recommendation right now is I'm jumping around from comics. But I'd like people to kind of check out Astro City. I reread a little bit. Yes, it's coming out at the end of the year. They're doing an omnibus, which is like the first third of it in one big volume.
I keep meaning to read that, so maybe I'll pick that up.
Yeah, it's good.
Oh, it's so good. It is so good. Those Metro books are well worth it. They're like $30. They're $5.
I picked up a cheap reprint of issue 1, I think, back at the comic book store a while back, and just haven't had the time to go back and get anything else. So
I think it's Kurt Busiek's mess. I think it's his best.
Yeah, easily his best thing.
I really do think. And it's Brent. I'm a huge Brent Anderson fan from all the way back when he did Kazar. When that Omni came out, I bought that a hot second because that is one of the most underrated comic books of the late 80s, 90s. And it's Kazar, and I read it religiously. It was like the number 1 book on my pull list for about 4 years. All right, folks. Well, thanks, guys. This was a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
It will be a lot of editing. But it'll be a blast. And this may be episode 100.1 and 100.2, which wouldn't be a bad idea. And thank you again for coming on.
Awesome. Thanks, Ross.
Thank you very much.
All right. And as always, folks, thank you for listening. And be safe, be smart. Please be kind to one another. Be a good Legionnaire, not an Abdon Landing or a Bendis Legionnaire. And read some comics.